Amber, can you give a thumbs up if you can hear me?
I can hear
There
you.
we go. Okay,
Great.
cool. Cool. We good? Cool. All right. I'm Jeff Kenny. I'm here to talk about the trip we took to Assam, India in January. And it's pronounced Assam. I'm sure I will say Assam at least 14 times tonight. Um, Thanks for coming out to the coolest St. Patrick's Day event in Westchester. And apologies if any mistakes in here because all three dogs decided to be sick all night last night. So it affected my ability to do this. So in January of this year, we went to Assam, India. There's me and Angela and our guide Surya, and Jason Hall there is hiding behind Surya in the Jeep on the right. On the left there, we have one of the G's Golden Langiers, which Angela will get into later. First off, I want to say it's the beginning. Everybody's name across the top there has photos that went into this presentation. If the photos are bad, they're mine. If they're good, it's one of those people or Angela. So just want to say off the bat. Uh, right off the bat, a lot of people were asking us, why are we going to India? The reason we went probably wouldn't have done it on our own. George Armistead is doing a trip next year for Hillstar and Lifeless Podcast to Assam, India, basically doing the trip we did in January. Our trip this year was a scouting trip for his trip next year. Angela's going to drop a link in the chat if you'd like to take a look. I'm just throwing that out there. So it was actually pretty funny. We were at a cemetery in the middle of Coatesville, Atlasing, of course, and I got a wall of text from George. And Angela was over on the other side of the cemetery, probably counting starlings. And I'm like, oh, wait till you see this. And basically, I scroll through this long text from George, and I see dozens to hundreds of rhinos in a day. I'm like, let's make this work. And I actually want to say this at the beginning. Has anybody been to India? Okay. Okay, we're up. Okay. 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 Everybody we've asked, they said Assam's cool, but you need to go to, and just so happens to be the state they're from is the coolest one. Okay. But everybody I've asked is like, oh, you need to go to Gujarat. Gujarat's the coolest one. Not, just happens to be whatever state anybody's from is the coolest one. Okay. So we had a couple people in the room more than I thought. Just to do like a quick background on India. And what was your name? Any of this is wrong, just let me know. So I just put all this off Wikipedia, so my apologies if this is wrong. Just quick background on India. It's been inhabited for as long as there have been modern Homo sapiens. It's independent from England since 1947. Largest country, seventh largest country in the world by land mass, largest by population, which is 1.4 billion people. The language situation in India fascinates me. There are two official languages, which would be English and Hindi. I think I've read that there are more English speakers in India than anywhere else in the world, which is pretty amazing. Hindi is another official languages. There's 22 state languages, and there's 424 recognized languages. So a lot of people speak at least three or four languages because it seems like a lot of people speak English and Hindi. A lot of people speak at least one state language, then a lot of people speak a local language. So the language situation in India is fascinating. New Delhi is the national capital. There's 28 states and 8 territories. The national bird is the peafowl, which we know as the peacock or the peahen. There are 1,393 species on the official checklist of Indian birds, and there's 1,380 on eBird. There's a map of India there. You see my, you only see my cursor, but okay, we're going to be on the right there is where we're going to be on the next slide. Cool. There's 7 states in the Northeast, and you can kind of see where that is, where we jump to there on the right side there. There's 7 states there. They're called the Seven Sisters. There's 31. Oh, I'm sorry. Assam is one of those states. You can see out there on the green. There's other highlighted ones. There are other Indian states. That's Bangladesh there on the left side. There's Bhutan. I forget which other countries are on the right, but you kind of see where that is. There's 31 million residents of Assam. The capital city is Guwahati, which is one of the 10 fastest growing cities in the world. There's 2 state languages for Assam. There's 2 like more minor state languages. It's known for silk tea and wildlife tourism. It's got a tropical monsoon climate, so it rains from like May, September. There's monsoons during that period. Otherwise, the temperature is very pleasant. I think the highest temperature we had the whole time was 80, and it would be down in the 50s in the morning. It was especially with how cold it was when we left here. Um, it's one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. Assam has 719 bird species on eBird, and there was one less before we went there, which we'll get to. And there's roughly 190 mammal species. This is preparing for India because that's I know India's overwhelmed. Because I'm going through more than I would on this. Like if we just went to like Texas or somewhere or Oregon, like I wouldn't go through all this. I know people are interested in like what was it like to go to India, what all you need to do. So I'm gonna go through all this quick. And if anybody has questions in the room, please just raise your hand or yell at me. That's fine. 3 to 6 months prior to the trip, the normal make sure your passport's going to last is still with an expiry and all that. Vaccinations, we got a couple. We got like Japanese encephalitis. We already had yellow fever from South America. Giant Travel Health was awesome. I can't recommend them enough. They took our insurance and it was like a fifth of the price it would have been to go to Passport Health. So Giant Travel Health was awesome. Like it just did the giant supermarket. Um, India, you do need a visa, which was approved ahead. We did that online. It took like 20 minutes. It's $40. That's good for a year. The packing's a little weird for India with the domestic airlines. They're really intense about batteries and cameras and like electronic stuff. Every time we went a domestic flight, they really looked at my scope for a while. So, which is interesting. Just something to think about. Just like normal stuff you need for travel. Nothing too crazy. So, it was the only problems we had at this entire trip were getting out of the U.S. So the day the Eagles played the Rams, that day it snowed. We were flying out of Newark. We watched the game at the airport, which was with a lot of Eagles fans, which was fun. But we left 4 hours late. And then, as you can see on that flight track there, our plane turned around over the North Atlantic. We were supposed to be flying from Newark to Munich to Delhi. And instead, we went Newark to Nova Scotia to Boston to Zurich to Delhi. I've never had this experience before, but a woman on our flight had a heart attack and the flight had to be diverted. So we turned around over the Atlantic and tried to land in St. John's, and the weather was too bad. And we flew to Nova Scotia from there, and she got off the plane alive. So I don't know what happened to her, but she got off the flight. And then the closest place they could get us was Boston. So basically, we did an 11-hour flight to go from Newark to Boston. Thankfully, it was on a German airlines. We flew Lufthansa, and they did all the rebooking for everybody. I feel like if that had been an American airline, they would have made everybody figure it out themselves. So by the time we landed in Boston, they actually had everything rebooked for us. So we lost a day, but we had an extra day built in the deli on the front, and it went as well as it could have. And the important thing there was the woman got off the plane and got medical attention. Actually, the most intense part of the flight was our half hour on the runway in Nova Scotia, and we're each at the window trying to find a bird so we could log it on eBird and light up Nova Scotia. Angela did find a starling, so that's that. That picture there in the upper right is us killing time at the Boston airport looking for snowy owls. Did not find any. That picture there is me, Angela, and Jason getting to Delhi, and that bottom right there was the first picture we took in India. So this was our itinerary. So New Delhi is where we landed there. That's kind of in like northern India. You see the 2, 3, 4, 5 are the national parks we're doing. Well, the 2 is Guwahati. So we did a domestic flight from Delhi to Guwahati. And then those are the 3 national parks where we spent our time. Kaziranga, Namari, Manas, that's the 3, 4, 5 there. The first stop was Kaziranga, and we're doing 3 nights at a lodge. Just a little background on Kaziranga National Park. Founded and preserved in 1901, National Park in 1974. It is a World Heritage Site. 420 square miles of grasslands, wetlands, tropical forests along the southern banks of the Brahmaputra River. It's at 2/3 of the world's Indian rhinoceros population, and I think at one point they basically had them all. They have so many there now, they're actually like shipping them out to the other national parks, which is pretty cool. Breeding populations of Bengal tiger, Indian elephants, deer species, king cobra, monitor lizards, many other species. It's declared IBA by IUCN, and at least 553 bird species have been documented here. And you can see like that's the map of the park there on the top, and kind of the like the Google that the river there is wild. It's called like a braided river, like the river moves a lot with the water coming down from the Alps. It's very cool. All right, before we do this, I want to say just like what a normal day on this trip was like. So we were basically in lodge type places. We would get up in the morning, have breakfast, and we'd be in the safari vehicles, and we would which is like the open top Jeeps, which I have pictures of later. So we'd be out on like safari in the morning. We generally had to stay in the Jeeps because there were elephants and tigers and things like that around. There were opportunities to walk, which we had a couple. You had to leave the park. The hours were weird at the parks because you had to leave at lunchtime, and it was much more expensive to get a full day pass than it was to buy like a morning session and the afternoon session. The rules are odd. I'm not sure what the reasoning for it was. Um, so we'd usually go back, but also too, it makes we'd go back and eat lunch and take a nap, which nobody was too mad about. And then we would go out for like an afternoon/evening session back in the park. The lodges we stayed were really good birding, so sometimes you'd want to take a nap at lunch, but you'd be birds all over the lodge. And then usually in the afternoon, evening, since Angela and I are crazy people, we would always try to go owling around the lodge too. So did pretty well on the owling at the lodges. That was pretty much a typical day in the national parks, along with some birds. So our very first outing, we were in the tea garden area, and that's actually like you see this picture up here, top center is like a tea garden area. This is our first outing, kind of getting our feet wet. I was extremely overwhelmed. I was trying to be the eBird person too, and I don't know any of the sounds. I don't know anything is. It was actually a pretty frustrating morning for me. But as we're getting back to the car, Angela called us over. Now she's going to jump in.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm not there in person. I'm super sick.
Angela,
Oh, could you hear me? Could you hear me?
if you're talking, you're muted. We don't hear you.
Oh, I can hear you from not in person.
Huh. I don't know what to do to fix that. Let me.
Can you hear it, Angela? Are you good?
All right. Can you hear? Could you everybody hear me now?
Yeah, you're gonna need to be louder, but yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. I don't know why people on Zoom could hear me, but you guys couldn't. Um, hi everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there. I'm really sick and I don't want to get anybody else sick, so I figured this was the best call. But yeah, India was so awesome. Like Jeff said, we were at this park. He was very overwhelmed. Also, he forgot to tell you his scope, his tripod broke as well. So he was very frustrated day one. But yeah, we birded this tea garden. It was beautiful. And we're walking back to the Jeeps, and it was me, George, and Jeff just like kind of lagging behind, like, oh, can't believe we made it. We had both George and Kristen also had some adventures on their way over. And we stopped to look at a bird, and I just like wandered a little bit ahead and looked over at another bird. And I'm like, oh, this is a cool bird. I look at it. I think I grabbed a photo, and I asked George, I'm like, hey, do you know what this is? He's like, no, that's interesting. He's like, where did you see it? And I almost didn't say anything because I'm like, oh, every single bird, it's overwhelming. None of these birds look like our birds. And it's just like, I don't know how many were on that first checklist, Jeff, like 60. And every single one was like new. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, this is just going to be one of those 60 birds and I'm going to sound like a moron. And so George took a look, grabbed some of these pictures, and everybody was waiting for us up in the Jeeps. We weren't that far away, so we ran up to the Jeeps, and Jeff was insistent that George show Surya, our guide, the photo. And the next thing you know, he's like, everybody out of the Jeeps. And
so where did you see that?
Yeah. So everybody just ran out of the Jeeps and got down here, and everybody got really good looks at this bird. So it was blue and white flycatcher, the state and regional first. It was very exciting.
And that was our first morning. So we started off with a bang.
It was very cool to see all the guys very excited too, because I think it was a lifer for everyone except for, I think, Molly.
Molly had it in Thailand.
Yeah, but everybody in that picture, I think it was a lifer for everybody. It was very exciting, and it was a really cool way to start our trip off. So that was fun. And I guess tons of people chased it afterwards. So it was in the news. Everybody's going to chase it. So it was really cool to keep following that like throughout the trip.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to say to you.
Or no? So there's our group there too. We took a group picture afterwards. So George, his wife Kristen. I'm trying to see everybody. Oh, it's on my screen.
Andrew, it's
Um,
George,
Josh and
Kristen.
Andrea. There's our guy Palab. These couple guys there were just at our first stop, but I cannot remember their names. That's Surya, Molly Brown, and her husband or fiance Jimmy. There's me and Angela, and that's Jason Holder on the left. There's pictures we got of the blue and white, which kind of looks like an elongated black-throated blue warbler that's kind of stretched out. This is kind of what it looks like to me. Here was the map, which is pretty cool. So you can see where this is all the eBird reports from 1900 to 2024. It's pretty cool. And there's Angela's name there on the right, almost stayed first. So pretty cool. So we spent 3 days exploring the Kaziranga National Park. So I just kind of like, I'm basically going to go through just each national park here that we go to, pull up some pictures, tell stories, and people can ask questions. So that's the Greater Adjutant there on the left. That I believe this national park was the only place remaining that they nest. I think it's less than 1,000 of them are left, but they're holding pretty strong there. They are huge and they are wild looking. Like you can see all that. They're bigger than our storks and they're weirder looking, which is saying something. That's the Himalayan griffin there on the right. They're like old world vultures. Pretty cool. Black-necked stork, black-backed forktail. You can't quite see it, but that tail's like twice as long as the bird on that one. The Indo-Chinese rollers were basically everywhere, and they wouldn't. Kind of like if you're out in the summer and there's kingbirds around everywhere and they don't really move, that's the Indo-Chinese rollers. Like they don't care and they look like that. So you basically would stop to look at every single one, even if you saw 40.
And if you see them with their wings open, that really pretty bright
Bird
blue.
highlights Kaziranga. That bird on the upper left is actually the Eurasian wryneck. They're actually a woodpecker that is cryptic like a whippoorwill. We were really lucky to get that out in the open like that, but they're basically a woodpecker you don't really see because they're camouflaged and act like a whippoorwill almost. There are quite a few kingfishers around. That was one of the near looking ones. You can see the bill on him. Brown fish owl there on the left. And they are exactly what their name says they are. They actually walk out into shallow water to catch fish, and their eyesight. So they've evolved away a lot of the really good hearing that some owls have, and they actually have really strong eyesight. The Asian barred owlet, there were two small common owls. That's one of them. The other was the spotted owlet. But these guys were all over the place. And especially at night, if you like played for them, like 5 would respond. And we actually found roosts of these guys during the day where you'd see like 5 or 6 of them. And you can see how cute they are. Short-billed minivet there on the right. There were a couple different minivet species that were extremely difficult to ID, especially for me because I don't know how to ID anything. But the minivets are pretty cool. All right. We had this on our first day. It's getting towards dark. Surya had already promised a tiger, and he delivered on the first day. Jason Hall actually took all these pictures. We had the tiger really well, I would say, for about 2 minutes. And you can see we're in the Jeeps there on the rest of our group's in the Jeeps there on the bottom. And the tiger kind of went up the left side parallel with the road. And that is how we got those pictures. And it was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I don't know what even would really compare to that, but that thing was majestic. Also, Indian rhinoceros. These are George's pictures. You can see the eastern cattle egret up next to the baby rhinoceros there. So it's a baby with a mom there. The Indian rhinoceros is the only one that has the one horn. You can see how small the little guy is there. I have no idea what that one in the upper left is doing, but it's pretty much they had cattle egrets kind of following them around the whole time, which is pretty cool. There were quite a few rhinoceros there, and one of them actually charged our Jeep the one morning, and it wasn't scary because it only lasted a couple seconds, but after it was done, it was like, that rhinoceros just kind of charged right at us there. And then like he just went about his day like nothing happened, and we're like, it was pretty wild. Also, there are Asian elephants, which we had pretty well. A picture on the bottom right is incredible, but he kind of just thing that was amazing with them is they just kind of appear out of nowhere for something that's as big and as heavy as it is. They just appear and then they disappear. Like that guy, this is all the 2 pictures on the bottom are the same elephant. He was straight on and then he just kind of walked up the road and just disappeared, kind of like lumbering around and just appeared and disappeared out of nowhere. Some other creatures we had in Kaziranga. That's an Asian water monitor on the upper left. He was in the exact same spot 3 days in a row. So I'm not sure if he was real, but he didn't move for 3 days. That's a tokay gecko in the upper right. You can kind of get a feeling how big it is. I think somebody said he's the largest gecko in the world, but I did not confirm that. And in the left is my ugly mug. I had to take a selfie with a water buffalo. You can see over my left shoulder there because it was too ridiculous not to do that. And that's my nice Pennsylvania Bird Atlas hat there. Plug. Some miscellaneous shots from Kazaranga. Kind of get a feel for what the place looked like. There were a lot of wetlands there. So we had, anywhere you go with wetlands and there's a wildlife drive through, you get an awful lot of species. That's one of our Jeeps there on the top. Our group, it was 9 of us, so we spread across the 3 Jeeps. Each one had a driver and a guide that was with us for the time, and then we split up across the 3 Jeeps. The left there's one of the places we could actually get out on foot. The thing that was interesting with the wetlands is I was surprised how many ducks that were there that we also have here. Because I know they're circumpolar, but I didn't realize they would be as far south as India. We had northern shovelers, gadwall, pintail, mallards, and there's something else we had. That was pretty neat. Common merganser. All right. That was Kazaranga. Any questions on the first part? Cool. Next is the Mary, which was a couple-hour drive from Kazaranga. It's originally founded as a forest reserve in 1978, established as a national park in 1998. 200 square miles. This one has really good plant diversity. Also elephants, leopards, and hog deer. It's hosted greater than 400 species of birds and spent 2 nights at the Eastern Himalayan Botanical Ark, which was an old tea farm. And also, this is where myself and George and Joss and Angela watched the Eagles beat Washington to go to the Super Bowl. You can see it there in the bottom right. We watched that at like 2 in the morning on a laptop, and you can see a nice Kingfisher beer right next to it. So pretty cool. You can see on the left there, the Google picture, like those rivers just look so cool coming out of the Himalayas like that. That's different, and then it meets up down at the bottom there. It's pretty neat the way the rivers come out. So we were only there for like 2 nights. We had 2 main outings there. And of course, they were both the same day and also the same day after I was up until 6 in the morning watching football. So I'm intelligent. So the first thing we did, we were crossing the Kameng River in the fog. And that's actually us there on the boat, which it felt like you were in a movie, like a Viking raid or something. You couldn't see the other side. And we went in 2 groups across, and it's like the other group, you just watch them disappear. So that was pretty cool. Our main target there was white-winged duck, which we didn't see, but we heard. And I was able to record it. It's only the 8th recording that species on eBird. Angela's going to drop that recording into the chat if you want to hear it at some point. It's pretty cool. These are just pictures of that morning. It was really foggy. The birding wasn't great, but the pictures
Jeff.
are really cool. That's
Jeff.
a grayback shrike up there in the upper right.
Jeff.
There were a lot of shrikes there, and they would just sit out in the open like that. So it's pretty cool. I think we had like 4 or 5 different shrikes on a regular basis, and they would all just kind of be perched up like that, like you'd expect out of a shrike. The other outing at Namari was my favorite thing we did on the trip, and it seemed to be quite a few people's favorite thing on the trip. We had a 9-mile rafting trip down the Kameng River, looking for ibis bills, Pratt and Coles, and other cool stuff on the river. And you can see that's our eBird track there on the upper right, going down our blue lines, the track we did. I think it was like 9.2 miles or something like that. There's pictures of us on the rafts. There's pictures of the river, and it was like, it's called a braided river because the river's moving constantly, like the track of the river moves. If you look at it on the map, it's incredible. And if you went there in 2 years, the river might have like a different course. And there'd be like almost like little lagoons on the river. It was very cool looking.
Hey, Jeff.
But here's what we had. So George took all these pictures. He was on fire on this one. That's a pied kingfisher there on the top. On the bottom there was the main target. That's an ibis bill. They're kind of shorebird adjacent, but they're also in their own family. So they're a monotypical. George really likes to get the monotypic birds, and he was pretty happy to get that. But we basically had them within 5 minutes to get in the boats. So if we were in the boats for 2 hours and that was our target, it was really nice to get that bird 5 minutes in. And it was a national holiday that day. So there's people on the beach like blasting dance music and stuff and partying. And I had video just on my phone of this bird. And somebody's like, I sent it, like, what's with the dance music? I thought they were like supposed to be scared, but people partying and these guys are running along the rocks. It was very cool. It's a Pratt and Cole there in the top. They're coursers. They're kind of like, to me, they almost look like if you cross the shorebird with a tern. You can see how well it's hidden there and how small it is. We had like 250 of them come in to roost on the rocks at dusk. It was very cool. That's a river lapwing there on the bottom. on a river. Lapwings are kind of in the killdeer niche. Quite a few there, but they're like bigger, basically bigger, louder killdeer, if you can picture that. Ruddy shelduck there on the upper right. And then George just couldn't wait to show me his pictures, and we had a look on the boat. So, but
Hey, Jeff, can
this
you
was
hear me?
honestly my favorite thing on the trip. I think it was kind of everybody's favorite thing, or at least second. It was a lot. We're like, it was, the weather was nice. We're across 3 different rafts. Like, it was, the water was easy. Everybody was having fun. It was a really good time. And we got the ibis bill. So that was our main things we did in Namari. We had a long travel day to get to the next national park, but we had a couple stops that were pretty notable. The first one there on the left is so the upper left, those are all bats. We were driving and they were flushed from a roost, I guess, because obviously they're nocturnal. But it almost looked like it was like my brain wanted to say it was a couple hundred black vultures up circling around. But they were large bats. It has a 3 to 4 foot wingspan. They're nocturnal. They only eat fruit. That's Angel's picture there. Angel got a pretty good picture, but there were hundreds of them up and flying around. It was wild. So it was our first stop that was notable on this travel day. Our second stop there it's called the Seed Farm. It's actually part of the next national park, but you can kind of get a look at the place. It's a big open grassland there where there's like rice farms. You can kind of, that's 2 pictures there in the upper right of what this area looked like. The 3 pictures there in the center, we actually did a vote. Molly made us do a vote at the end of the trip to see what everybody's favorite bird was. And this one won. So that's the pied harrier. Basically, think exactly acts like our northern harrier, same niche, same everything, hunts the same way, except it's black and white. So we had that's a male there, and that bird was absolutely beautiful. You can see how nice it looks, and it was like same way our harrier would circle around you, come back. Just, it was very hard to actually walk away from that bird. And the target there was a Bengal florican, which you can, I swear there's one in the picture there in the bottom right. They're almost like they're bustards. So I don't think we even really have anything analogous to that. They're basically like tall field birds that spend the time on the ground. You can kind of see there in the bottom right. You should look it up on our own. This picture is doing justice. They're pretty neat birds, but it was kind of a disappointing look. But that's the only picture anybody got of one. And it took us a lot of work to even get that. So it was cool to get it, but not the most exciting. We were told too, if like the March trip next year is after they've started doing burns. So there's a lot less of the tall grass left, and they're actually much, much easier to get once the burns start. But here, there's almost like too much habitat this time of year because the grass is still pretty high. So this is our third national park we went to. This is Manas. This was my favorite of the 3. This was created in 1928, dedicated national park in 1990. This is also a World Heritage Site. It's 190 square miles of grassland and forest. And actually, the northern border there is the country of Bhutan. They have 55 species of mammals and over 450 species of birds. We spent 3 nights at the lodge there, and that lodge was actually my favorite. We had nightjars there every night, which is the long-tailed nightjar. We had 3 or 4 owl species every night. We had the bee eaters on the fence. That place was very cool. The rhinoceros there, they were extirpated from this park. They're actually introduced from the first park we went to. So that's like one of the places they've started to send the rhinoceros out to, which is pretty cool. Here are some of the bird highlights from that national park. That's one of the spotted owlets. That was the other very common owl that one actually was our last morning. We saw the hoopoes going crazy, and we go over and there's one spotted owl. Oh, there's 2, and ended up being like 4 of them in 2 trees, and we didn't see either of them before the hoopoes started going crazy. Common Mai there on the upper left. There was actually one of the more common birds. They're related to starlings, so it's a pretty cool common bird. Juvenile shrike there. The collared falconet is like the 2nd or 3rd smallest bird of prey in the world. It's substantially smaller than the kestrel. I mean, it's called a falconet, so like he was pretty cool. Gray Lord Broadbill, which is one of our targets there. It's a tough picture, but it's the only picture anybody ever got on. So nice work, Angela. The purple sunbirds are one of the very common birds on the lodge. Like that was one of the days I was trying to take a nap, and there was 3 sunbirds singing in the tree outside of my room. So it's like, I'm not taking a nap. Like I was sitting out front. So they were pretty cool. This is one of the ones I forgot to put captions on. I blame the dogs. That's actually the female of the purple sunbird there in the upper left. The upper right there is the bee eater. They were on the fence at all times every time we left our rooms. That was another one that was tough not to spend some time on. Bottom center is a babbler. I forget which. The left side there is a sultan tit. So it's actually like a pretty close related, like a titmouse. It's a little tough to see there, but he's got like a yellow crest too. They were really pretty birds. Bottom right's a white eye. I'm not sure what that is on the upper left. Here were some of the mammal highlights of that park. Obviously rhino there in the upper left. You kind of see how close there we were with the elephants, which is pretty cool. And you can see there the water buffalo in the upper right with the Jeep coming at us. That's a gar in the bottom right. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. They're the largest bovine in the world, and they might be like a very distant ancient relative to domestic cattle, which they were pretty cool. I mean, they basically look like big fat cows with really tiny legs, and they kind of run really strange. Kind of get an idea of like the legs are really tiny on them. Bottom center there is a sandbar deer, which was a very strange animal. You can kind of see it there on its neck. They have an open, basically, wound. They all have that. Nobody's quite sure why. But you can kind of see it there on the neck. It's like they were very strange. And I researched it afterwards, and nobody's entirely sure why they have that, but they all have it. So it's pretty cool. That's a langur there on the left. I forget which.
That was the
So
Kaplinger.
this was the park that bordered Bhutan. And you actually, the road in the national park goes right up to a border crossing. And we were actually pretty content to basically just drive up to the border and kind of see if we could see some birds on the other side and just live Bhutan. But one of our drivers like, hang on, let me go check something. And he actually went and asked the border guard if we could walk in like 100 yards, and they let us in. So we illegally entered Bhutan. Don't tell anybody. The first bird we saw fly down the river was an osprey. So that was a pretty funny place to get an osprey. There's the Bhutan selfie we took there in the bottom left. I think it's really pretty. And that was like it was mostly foothills where we are in India. And basically, like you start going straight up there, right at the border. You can see the mountains there. That was the tallest mountains we saw on the trip, and that's the Himalayas there. I wish we could have kept going, but that was pretty cool. And that's like the border station there on the upper right. It's the river. It was pretty cool. Miscellaneous things from Manas, kind of just like some scenery shots there. Don't know what kind of spider that is. Don't know what kind of butterfly that is. But that kind of gives you like this place is basically open grassland or like woodlands, and those are the two habitats there. And it's basically the bottom. You can see that from the pictures there. We had a couple really nice. The one basically bird group we have on them over there is their warblers are terrible. They're basically all brown and they're tough to differentiate. So somebody says warbler, you get all excited, like, oh, we got, and it's like it looks like a peewee. So, but we had a couple pretty nice warbler flocks in that woods, and I mean, some of them have some color, but they're not the most exciting birds to see. And we're going. Angela's going to take over for this. If you can switch us. This was an excursion that you could do. Oh, there you go.
Could you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. There's a couple things I was trying to add in there. From the rafting ride, the slide before that, it was really foggy there. And I just wanted anybody who is actually thinking about possibly doing the trip in March of next year, at the time of year when we were there, at the end of January, beginning of February, there's a weather condition that comes down from the Himalayas. So in March of next year, if you decide to do this trip, you will not see all of this fog. I think there is still some fog in the morning, but not like we had. So while it was a little bit of disappointment for us, it wouldn't really play into the March trip because the weather conditions are different coming off the Himalayas. So I just wanted to put that in there because if you're looking to take some good pictures, this would definitely prevent it. But March, you don't have to worry about that. I did that several times, which was kind of frustrating. And Jeff, that other langur was the capped langur that we had in, yeah, right there. The one on the bottom left is the capped langur. It looks very similar to the golden langur, but you can go to the golden langur. So there was an option to go see these golden langurs. And this was in the trip when George first contacted us about going. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to go see these things. They're awesome. So we had a really big travel day right before this. So only 3 of us went. It was myself, Josh, and Andrea. It was about a 2 to 2.5 hour ride to get to this little village. I don't know how to say this reserve forest at all, Kakohana Reserve Forest, but it was more of just a community, a little town slash village, and you walk through these people's backyards. It really reminded me of going to chase a feeder bird, actually. And everybody's so excited to have you there. Everybody's looking at you and taking pictures of you as we're taking pictures of these langurs. But these langurs live in small family groups, usually I think about 8 to 15. And there's usually only 1 or 2 males in that family group. And we went to the first group, and they all just settled in for like an afternoon nap. So we got a few pictures, but it was not underwhelming because it was still like super special to see them. But then we met a guide there, Sanjay, and he took us to a different family. And then this is where we got these pictures. There was a baby there, and this langur just came down. And could you go back, Jeff? And the picture where you see Josh and Andrea taking pictures is actually them taking a picture of the one right underneath the text. And if you look closely, you can see them sitting up there. They were very curious about us, and just came to check us out. They were so close to us. The baby kept watching us. There's pregnant females there. It was just so super awesome. This was like, this and that rafting ride were my 2 favorite things. And I just put some facts up here. The golden langurs are one of the most endangered species of primates, and their population keeps decreasing. And that's because they live in these isolated family groups, and they have no way of safely reaching each other or more food. So if you go to the next page, we met up, this guy, Sanjeev Ray, was like so super awesome. He works with the community and kind of like bridges the community to all the conservation efforts, and really gets like the community like to buy in, so they welcome people like us to come see them. And it just raises awareness for everybody. And so he told us all about what they're doing, which is these rope bridges. And the plan would be to do, I guess they're actually chain bridges. They go across the street, which is pretty wide, and it helps conserve the langurs because they're not getting hit by cars or getting electrocuted. And it also helps them find the other family groups so that there's no more inbreeding. So it was so impressive, and he was so passionate about it. It was awesome. So he invited us back to his little camp for tea and like some snacks that his wife made. And the National Geographic from the UK happened to be there at the same time. So we bumped into one guy, but we didn't really have any conversation. But yeah, we met his wife and his kids, and it was super special. And I don't know, I love that. If you get a chance to go see them, I would go see them. I would drive the 4-hour round trip for them. It was just amazing. But okay, I'm done with them.
All right. So after the 3rd national park, we unfortunately had to start making our way back home. We had to do the domestic flight from Guwahati back to Delhi. Before we got on that flight, somebody's like, you're on the right side of the plane. You need to be looking out the window after takeoff. That's the Himalayas there on the right. We went by the Himalayas for like a half hour. It was incredible. And that's just my phone picture out the window. We had our group dinner when we got back to Delhi. People started peeling off heading home. We had the full next day to ourselves in Delhi. There's actually a national park kind of on the outskirts of the city, and it's a large wetlands kind of surrounded by an urban area there. It really gave me vibes of Hines. It like each of us at some point were like, I feel like we're at Hines today. But it was like a nice big wetlands kind of city around it. There's school groups going through. There's people jogging. You know, it was kind of just like almost a multi-use place. But we got 81 species of birds there walking 3.5 miles. Um, it really felt like Hines. Like we made friends there with the school group there. You can see that on the bottom. That was a group of school kids all wearing their uniforms, and there's me, Angela, and Jason there wedged in with them. So that was pretty cool. There's another one of those diurnal owls we found recently again. That was one of the Prinias there is the songbird. I think maybe the fancy Prinia. I forget. That's a booted eagle there on the top. There's a picture there on the right. You can kind of see that large wetlands there. It's a big loop around it. And there's Jason getting low for some content. It's pretty cool. And we had a long layover in Munich on the way home that we made the most of, as you can see there in the upper right. But Munich was a really easy city. Take the train into the city, got some sausage, got a beer, got 7 more lifers. For some reason, the tufted ducks were coming right up to the shoreline and swimming around, which is pretty cool. There's us in Munich. It's a pretty fun little layover on the way home. Here's the hall. Kind of like everybody had different numbers of birds because you're in different safari vehicles. And you would kind of be in different vehicles every day. So somebody might see thing in one Jeep, you didn't see that. I personally had 303 species in the 10 days in India. 254 of them were lifers, and I like to get audio. I got 64 audio species, and I'm sure I would have had more if I knew what I was recording. Angela had 307 species, 280 of those were lifers. I was in Portugal before, so I actually got some of the stuff before that was new for her. Here's our mammals list. We had quite a few mammals. Like I run through them. Giant squirrel I didn't see. We saw the river dolphins. They were kind of, I didn't put any pictures in from it, but we were on a boat in the river and you would kind of be looking in the one direction, hoping the dolphins would jump up.
It was very underwhelming.
Mixed results, I'll say. We did see otters. We had a tiger. Oh, I actually forgot to mention this. On our last safari outing on the last night, we're coming out basically in the dark. And Surya said, make sure you're either looking forward or looking behind you, but make sure you're watching the road. And Angela and I are looking straight ahead. Something dark, something like slinks across, and we're like, ah. And Surya's like, that was a black leopard. So we were the only ones that had one, and we only had it for about 5 seconds. We had a black panther, black leopard just slink across the road just like it was the Pink Panther. Like it did that like same slink. It was incredible. And if that's all I ever see one of those in my life, that's just the way it's got to be. It was very cool. And that was the only one we had on the trip. Some of the other stuff we had a couple different species of monkeys. The rhesus macaques were, I don't know if anybody's ever been around them or dealt with them. They basically act like people would act if we could act how we wanted to. So they were just kind of like running around the property, smashing flower pots, running across roofs. Like we're trying to watch the Eagles game at 2 a.m. and they're just like banging on the roof. Like they were something. We had we had a couple different species of monkeys, deer. It was a lot of mammals. I'm trying to think, we unfortunately dipped the king cobra, but there's apparently a reliable one in the first park. But you drive by and it's either out on the tree sunning or it's not. And unfortunately, it was not. We apparently missed it by 20 minutes. Quick reminder, this was for a scouting trip or a trip that is being offered next year if people have interest. The link's in the chat. Kind of thoughts and wrap-ups. I know India might be a scary place to some people. We had no problems at all. The only problem we had was trying to get out of the US. And then really trying to get back into the US if we ever been through customs. So those were really the only issues we had. We had drivers and guides the whole time. The drivers were incredible, and the guides are also incredible. Very high expectations on the food, and I would say they were exceeded. I do think if you don't like Indian food, you might have trouble traveling there. But like I didn't really see options to. I love Indian food. I could have. It's all I ate for 2 weeks. The food was incredible. I do think you'd have trouble if that is not to your liking. The driving is wild. Uh, I'm not sure what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Kind of like if there's room for your car, you can go. um, it was the and it, but everybody, but it's just the normal driving. Everybody's used to it. Nobody's mad at each other. Nobody's road raging. It's just how they drive. People are beeping each other a lot. The driving was it took me a day to like kind of acclimate to everything. The driving was amazing. I was impressed by how good the drivers are. Um, the thing there at the bottom, 30% of the Indian bird species have enough audio to work on Merlin, and it would actually flash up. If you're trying to use Merlin, basically like, hey, only 30% of the species actually work here. So I felt like I actually really contributed I recorded as much as I can. I got really good audio of a couple species that don't even have recordings on Merlin. So I'm hoping mine make it there at some point. So that would be pretty cool. Do you have anything for the wrap up, Angela, before we? Oh, another thing I wanted to say too, like everybody was unbelievably helpful and accommodating. Like at that, like just something that really blew my mind was that last national park we went to. We had Ubered there from our hotel in Delhi, and we just didn't even think about it. Like we Ubered there, we're of course we'd be able to Uber back, just not even really thinking ahead. So we couldn't, and we couldn't find a ride back, and the park was closed. And the last two or three guys closing up were like, hey, you guys, what's going? You guys need a. So we explained to them the situation. It was like the head biologist of the park and somebody else. It was like important people at the park, and they brought us back into the park, went and got us desserts, made us tea, found us a cab, went and talked to the cabbie first, went and talked to the cab driver when he pulled up before we went over to tell him we were going to make sure everything was legit, and then got us into the cab. And then when we're 10 minutes down the road, the guy called the cab driver to make sure everything was going okay. Like it was just that wouldn't happen here, especially to somebody who doesn't even speak the native language. Like everybody was unbelievably friendly and accommodating, and just really couldn't have gone any better. Do you have anything you wanted to add, Angela?
Yeah, could you hear me? Could you hear me, Jeff?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. It was just so much fun. We had such a good group. I mean, I don't have a single complaint. There's nothing we could do about our trip there. And that woman had a worse time than we did. I have to say, as far as the food, I'm not a super spicy person at all. And I had no problem with the spice level. Everything that like was even mild for me, I would say. Not everything. You had choices of spicier food, but if spice is a reason that you're concerned, I wouldn't be worried about it too much. Yeah, it was the first couple days felt like 3 months, because even the first day it's like, oh, remember we found that blue and white flycatcher, and it's like, wow, that seems like 4 days ago. And then when we're on our way to the last park and you finally did the countdown to time to go home, it felt like it flew by, and then it got a little sad. But it was so smooth and awesome. I just wanted to add that in. I think like two of the parks we had an armed guard with us, and they would just ride up front with the driver, and they're there for our safety. The one park we walked, and yeah, there could have been there's animals there. And then I don't know why they were driving with us in that last park, but they were always super nice and helpful too. So I could not recommend. I would go on this trip again in March. Honestly, it was amazing. Yeah.
You switched. I had something I remembered I wanted to say.
Go ahead.
So we had the extra unplanned 11-hour flight to got us nowhere at the beginning of the trip. So we basically lost a day in Delhi. And by the time we got there, because international flights arrive in India and depart like around within a couple hours of midnight. So we ended up getting Delhi, I think, around 1 or 2. We had to be back down to the lobby of the hotel at 5. So we basically had 3 hours in the hotel. My legs looked like tree trunks. And then we had to get another 2-hour flight after that. And then it was a couple-hour drive to where we were finally getting. So I passed out like the second we got there. And actually, there was an earthquake that first night. I think it was like a low intensity one, but like, I mean, we're from the East Coast. Any earthquake's intense, like. So like we had the earthquake the first night, it wakes both of us up. I'm like barely, and it's just like, what was that? And I'm like, it was an earthquake, and then like right back to bed. Like it was nothing. A literal earthquake wasn't keeping me awake that first night, but that was good for getting acclimated to the time change. So I think we were 11 hours ahead. I honestly don't remember, but
It was 10 and a half, but it was
so
weird.
any questions? I know I went through that a little quick, but anybody have any questions at all? I just use my phone. Same thing I use here. Yeah. Oh, we got over there. One person lost the morning
Jeff, can you
out
just
of a
repeat the
group of 9
question?
for being there for 10 days. Okay.